All right, let's dive into one of the most incredible economic stories in all of human history. We're talking about how right after World War II, a huge chunk of the world, like 85% of the population, suddenly broke free from thousands of years of just getting by. But to really get why this is such a mind-blowing shift, you have to ask a pretty basic question. For pretty much all of history, why did nothing really change? I mean, from the Roman Empire all the way up to the Industrial Revolution, the idea of your life being significantly better than your parents, it just wasn't a thing. Economic growth as we know it didn't exist. And this timeline just lays it all out there. Look at that. It's a flat line for centuries. You get a little bump around the Industrial Revolution, and then, bam! After 1950, the line goes almost straight up. That rocket ship right there, that's the Great Acceleration. It's where the 85% of humanity living in developing countries finally started to catch up. So how on earth did they do it?
Well, it turns out there was a kind of recipe, a surprisingly simple, repeatable formula that let basically any country tap into this explosive potential. Economists call it catch-up growth.
So what exactly is catch-up growth? Okay, think of it this way. It's not about having to invent the light bulb or the computer chip from scratch. No way. It's about being a super fast learner, just absorbing and applying 250 years of science, technology, and ideas that richer countries had already figured out. So this recipe has three basic ingredients. First, you open up. You let all that knowledge and technology flood in. Second, you fuel the engine with massive amounts of saving and investment. And third, you plug yourself into the world economy. After the war, trade deals made it way easier to sell your stuff to everyone else, creating these huge new markets. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The recipe itself was simple, sure, but it wasn't some magic wand you could just wave. Depending on a country's history, its leaders, and its local culture, people followed this recipe in really different ways, and that led to some wildly different results. You know, what's fascinating is just how wrong everybody's predictions were at the beginning. Back in the 1950s, all the experts were betting on Africa. It was full of natural resources. It was supposed to be the star. And Asia, poor in resources, everyone thought it would struggle. But the exact opposite happened. And that taught us a huge lesson. The most important resource isn't what's in the ground, it's people. Asia invested in its human capital, while many new African nations, totally understandably, were busy with the monumental task of just building their countries from scratch. Latin America's story, meanwhile, was a real roller coaster. They'd have these amazing bursts of growth, but then things would just fizzle out. A big reason was that they often turned inward, closing themselves off from the world. But the real problem underneath it all was extreme inequality. It created this constant political whiplash, swinging between populist leaders and conservative ones, which meant they never got the steady, long-term leadership they needed. And that, of course, brings us to the ultimate case study, China. I mean, no country has ever used the catch-up recipe with more speed or at a bigger scale. But that incredible success has created a brand new, really complicated problem. You could call it the dragon's dilemma. Just look at these numbers for a second. Back in the day, advanced countries grew at maybe 2.5%. The so-called Asian tigers hit a mind-boggling 7 to 9%. But China, since 1978, has averaged almost 10% a year. That means doubling the entire size of your economy every single decade. That isn't just growth. That's a permanent, chaotic revolution. And all that success leads you straight into this giant pothole, the middle income trap. It's the point where your country gets stuck. See, your workers' wages have gone up, so you're not the world's cheapest factory anymore, but you haven't quite figured out how to create the high-tech, high-value stuff to compete with the most advanced countries. It's a tough spot to be in, and it's where most countries stumble. This quote just hits the nail on the head. It's from the 1980s, when a Korean journalist was worried that higher wages would ruin their economy. But here's the brilliant insight. Trying to keep wages low is a dead end. The whole point of economic growth is for people to earn more. The real answer is to let wages rise, because that's what forces your entire country to innovate and move on to the next level. So why does any of this matter to you? Because the success of these countries has totally changed the game for the entire planet. It's created a whole new set of massive challenges that affect every single one of us, no matter where we live. Let's start with just the sheer scale of it all. Right now, the global economy is about $60 trillion. Big number. But get this, it's on track to triple in just the next 25 years. Just try to imagine the pressure that's going to put on our planet, our resources, our climate. The way we grew in the 20th century just isn't going to work anymore. And then there's the question of who actually gets all this new wealth. This chart, they call it the wine glass shape, shows just how crazy the split is. The richest 20% of people on Earth, they take home 86% of all the income. The poorest 20% get just 1%.
And if you want to zoom in even more, it gets wilder. Just 2% of the world's population owns more than half of all the household wealth on the planet. I mean, just let that sink in. That kind of concentration is a recipe for serious instability. And finally, this whole story circles right back home to the developed world. Here, globalization and technology are splitting society in two. If you're highly educated, there are more opportunities than ever. But for the middle class, jobs are disappearing, getting automated, or shipped overseas. It's what leads to those jobless recoveries and this growing feeling that the system just isn't working for most people.
So the Great Acceleration lifted billions of people out of poverty, which is an amazing achievement. But it also brought us to this critical moment. The old ways of doing things are clearly not going to work on a planet with an economy that's about to triple in size. And that leaves all of us with the biggest question of our time. How do we invent a totally new way to grow? One that's actually sustainable, one that's fair, and one that creates opportunities for everyone.